Well, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules, your busy Excel crunching schedules, to come and join us today. My name is Matthew Hill. I'm a director of Cortell. I'll tell you a bit more about myself shortly. So, got a pretty full agenda for the next 6 hours. Is the doors locked? So just to quickly run through the agenda, I'm going to take you through the IBM Planning Analytics product. I'm going to give you a demo as to how an end user would use the product and go through some of the features and functionality. And then I'm also going to spend a bit of time looking to build some models. Quite often in these sort of sessions you don't get exposure into the various mechanics and workings of constructing a planning model or a forecasting solution or completing some analytics. So all things going well, I'll take you through a build of a few models. And we're very fortunate to have Grantham Good here from Pepper, one of our clients, who's going to tell you about their story, their roadmap, their journey, where they've come from, where they are now, and he'll share some lessons with you as well. And we're also, again, very fortunate to have Mr. Dan Rabella, who joins us from the US, IBM. Dan's the Global Business Executive, the leader for IBM Planning Analytics at IBM. So great opportunity to hear from Dan in terms of where IBM are taking the product as well. And then obviously you're more than welcome to stay and join us for some drinks. Some of the Cortell guys are here. You put your hand up, Cortell guys. 2. I'm leaving. All right. And we've got some IBMers as well in the rooms. IBMers, Kerry and Darren. So we'll be around to be able to answer any questions and to help you on your journey. So without further ado, let's get into it. So a little bit in terms of Cortell, just to recap. So we're based here in Sydney. And today's our last event after a very hectic week touring the country, presenting the solution. So very, very happy to be finishing off in my hometown. So welcome. We provide business analytics solutions from the IBM brand, primarily the budgeting and forecasting solutions that I'm going to show you today, business analytics. We do a lot of work in the traditional business intelligence, which is your standard reporting, monthly reporting, dashboards, scorecards, and we're doing a lot more work in the predictive analytic and AI space. So not AI as the Terminator, artificial intelligence as Skynet, but more augmented intelligence where we're getting more and more data, we need to answer questions quicker, be able to mine it, find insights, look at correlations and things like that. So machine learning and the augmented intelligence capability that IBM offers. And I'll show you a bit of that today as we have a look at how that's impacting on the Office of Finance and other areas of our organisation. Yes, so that's pretty much covers from my Cortell perspective who we are. Now, just to add some credentials here, here's a list of some of our customers, not all of our customers. We've got hundreds of customers here in Australia, but the key thing here is that you can see that the solution spans the likes of the Woolworths, the BHPs, the Virgin Australias, right through to smaller organisations such as Guide Dogs New South Wales, a very charity, not-for-profit organisation with a small finance team. So the width and breadth of our customers across different industries and different sizes, this is a solution that addresses anyone and everyone. A bit about myself, so I'm an accountant by trade. Before I got bored doing the annual accounting financial processes and want to add some more value to my clients. And so went into the area of predictive analytics and budgeting and forecasting, and really wanted to focus on helping organisations move from Excel hell and into using their time smarter to find insights and to be able to help them create models that would help make decisions or effective decisions in their organisation. So I've been fortunate enough to consult for some of the Woolworths and the Virgin and help build and design their budgeting and planning models. I've been exposed to many, over the years, many budgeting processes and can see some of the pitfalls that organisations face when trying to deliver a budget or a plan. So just to talk about that a little bit. And obviously you're all here because there might be a need. So does anyone use TM1 or Planning Analytics here? Just a Fantastic, excellent, excellent. And who uses Excel for their budgeting processes? Quite a few, yep, everyone else. So what we see is that when we've got a disconnected planning process that uses Excel spreadsheets or a myriad of different sources of systems, we really struggle to get an integrated planning environment where we can actually look at the operational drivers and see the impact that they have on the financial results. So very hard, very difficult to change a sales plan, see how many people we actually need or how many products we need to manufacture, be able to cost and plan that through a logistics cycle, and then look at the output of that from a P&L or cash flow or balance sheet perspective. So, these are some of the challenges that we face. Also, if we've got different data sources where we're grabbing this information from, whether it's a general ledger, ERP system, a payroll system, a CapEx module, or something else, trying to pull that data together and have it make sense in a single store. A lot of organizations strive for a data warehouse or a data mart or a data lake to achieve this, which are very often long, expensive projects taking many years, and quite often driven from the IT department. Is anyone here from IT? Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have asked that question before. So what you'll see today is that a lot of these solutions are actually going back into the Office of Finance or different business unit lines, whether it's marketing and sales or logistics, whatever. So I'm going to show you how I, as an accountant, can actually build my own models without needing programming or coding to actually achieve that as well. And that allows us to become a lot more agile when we need to react to something. When the CFO says, oh, we're going to have another global financial crisis, which is doomsday, I want to run these models, what if? If the exchange rates change, I want to actually model that, have my updated cash flow. I want to know how much budget I can actually spend on marketing campaigns or hiring people. So without having that integrated model, it can be quite challenging to achieve those answers or get that information quite quickly. And the same challenge that we have with Excel or manual-based processes, where it's really difficult to actually see where we're at within a stage of a planning cycle. Certainly when you're emailing out templates to dozens, if not hundreds of people saying, please complete these templates and send them back in and then consolidate them, you really don't have the visibility if they've started the process or not. So you don't know if they're literally half an hour before the budget's due, starting to actually think about the money that they need to have to be able to execute the budget. So lack of transparency in workflow. Talk about a single version of the truth. Coming in and actually having a meeting and people discussing what revenue means for them. Could have different versions of these metrics. So we talk about a common data language within the organization or master data management and having glossary of terms that are used across our planning and reporting and analytics. Talked about the no agility, how all of this coming together in a manual way adds so much time and complexity to the budgeting process. And it really is no wonder that it takes 2 months, 4 months, 6 months to actually achieve a plan when we could be, if we had a connected planning environment, moving on to rolling forecasts or more strategic planning scenarios, long-term views, and that's where the real value is when it comes to planning in our organizations. And of course, with manual Excel or other based processes, we're really opening up for errors within the models. The number of times that I've been reviewing a Excel-based model and have a look at some formulas, and there might be plus $100,000 on the end of a formula, and I actually asked what this number's meaning and where did it come from, and the person said, well, I actually inherited this process from the person that left 3 years ago, and I just copied the formula over and always carried the number on. And so there's all these sort of challenges that you may face with a manual-based process. I'm sure this is all very familiar. I'm seeing a lot of nods. Yep, that's good. I do talk a little bit fast, so. And we'll keep it interactive as well. So if you've got any questions, please let me know. I'll pause for questions as we go through this. The final clip there, obviously lengthy and painful planning cycles, but you all know that. That's why you're here, which is good. So we've got some research, and I can actually share the paper with you from the FSN network. And what they did is they looked at organisations that had adopted tools like Planning Analytics to help them achieve a connected planning environment and move away from the manual nature with Excel spreadsheets. And they compared them to another peer group of those that hadn't. And some interesting information came out of that. So those that had an integrated planning environment were able to reforecast within a period of a week, whereas those that didn't, it was taking a lot longer, 1.5 times longer. We're able to respond to market changes 4 times quicker than the other peer group. And if you think about that, that's really where we can actually start to outperform our competitors, actually identify new opportunities or identify risks, and be able to manage them in an earlier, timely fashion. And very important stat there, 4 times faster. And obviously the accuracy with these models is very important as well. So, 1.7 times are able to calculate their revenue and profitability, 1.7 times greater than those that don't have an integrated environment. So this is not going to be about death by PowerPoint, so I'm just going to quickly chew through these slides. So planning analytics, what is it? So you'll hear me refer to planning analytics. I might slip up and call it TM1 as well. This is a traditional name, the name that it had for 24 years. It's had a rebirth, and Dan will share more information about that, but Planning Analytics is the new name of the platform, TM1. I might use both. So, Planning Analytics is both an on-prem install, as well as a true cloud or SaaS product. So, SaaS being software as a service. We're seeing probably 8 out of 10 clients today adopt the SaaS platform, whereas last year it might have been about 6 out of 10, the year before that might have been about 2 out of 10. So it's really ramping up in terms of being offered as a product that we can subscribe to and install and set up. Thank you, welcome. I'll start again. Sorry. Maybe you're right. Grab a drink, please, if you're calling. So it's offered as a cloud-based platform, and what that allows us to do is not require our own investment in infrastructure and resources to maintain not only the servers, but also provide updates to the platform and upgrades and new features and do the installations, please.
Are the servers located in Australia?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got a server, we're very fortunate because Sydney runs Australia, so we've got a server based here. And we've got a failover in Melbourne as well, and Dan will talk about that. So very important from a governance, security, data. We've got a lot of government clients, we've got universities, we've gone through all the credentials, the approvals, the ISO accreditation around security, so very important to know. But yes, so very fortunate that the servers are based here in New South Wales. And the cloud servers allow us, they're on a 4 to 6 week release cycle. So literally on a Saturday afternoon, we'll have an update that will go through, and it's adding new features. It's not generally fixing any problems because it's pretty stable. There's not too many issues with the platform. But it's really exciting to be able to come in on a Monday morning after that 4 to 6 week period. And then I don't generally read the release notes too much, but when I start using the platform, I start to see new features. Right click and there's a new option to do a drill through, or a new graph, or a new chart option, or something like that. So this continuous development and enhancement cycle, customers that are on SaaS are really achieving the value from the R&D that IBM are putting into it. And no longer are we waiting 6 months or a year for a new release. We're getting it in that 4 to 6 release cycle. But if you do require an on-prem solution, because of data securities or governance, or your organization has a mandate that it must be on-premise, there are still organizations like that, then you can have a physical solution on-premise as well. Okay. Excellent. So you can also see there that Planning Analytics integrates seamlessly with Microsoft Excel, but it takes away all the problems and challenges we have with Excel. So when I see data in Excel, it's actually stored in my models. And I can do read-write capability, and I've got security and things like that as well wrapped around it. And I'll show you that as well. Okay, so the other key thing here, I've got 2 slides on this. You'll see that we've been working with Planning Analytics now for over 20 years as an organization. And when you look at the width, the depth of the actual applications that organizations use for it, it's very wide and varied. And here's just a sum that we see common applications. I've got another slide, it's a little bit more cluttered, but I thought I'd show it as well. So you can see across all industries, we leverage Planning Analytics capability for budgeting and forecasting. But when you go into, for example, mining and resources, we have life of mine models and optimization, resource management in the healthcare to do planning of nurses and equipment, costing, clinical costing models. So these are all solutions that are available and developed within the TM1 platform. Okay. Right, but enough talking about the slides. Let's actually have a look at the platform. Here we go. Any questions just before I continue? An update's available. So, I'm going to log on to my platform here. So I'm actually using just my 4G device. I'm actually connecting to the cloud environment. And when I log on, you'll see that I'm in the Planning Analytics section here, and I've got a bunch of different folders. These operate just like Windows Explorer folders where I can put objects and templates and reports within them. I can also have security on these as well, so certain users can or can't see or access these environments. You'll see that on the top right here as well. I've got my exploration and prediction capability. So I can actually start doing some data mining and exploring the data, finding some insights with it. And then I've got my administration area as well. So I'm going to go into my budgeting platform. This is a solution, it's a Cortell solution called CoreMetis. It's to help with stock standard budgeting forecasting processes. So you can literally take this product and just drop it into your organization and use it as is. And we develop and update it and add new operational models and continue to build out the functionality in it. And I'm going to take you through that because it shows all the features and functionality of TM1, or Planning Analytics. So I'll start with my top-down model and my workflow. So I've got some organizations within my model here, and you can see that I'm looking at my budget process, but I can look at any other scenario or version. So I might have a rolling forecast model, I might have various what-if models. We can create new models on the fly. And you'll see here that if I look between my different entities, so if I pick Loom and Leaf, you can see I can see that it's been completed and it's all been ticked off, the dates and times. And the good thing about this is it's all secure. So as soon as I approve a budget, it becomes locked read-only for me. I can't change it. How often have you had an Excel-based process where you finish the budget on afternoon, Friday afternoon maybe, go home for the weekend, come back on Monday and the numbers have changed somehow? So this allows us to be able to lock it. And we've also got audit trails as well to trace if the number has changed, who changed it, and then you can go and beat them or do something. So I can have a look at by different versions, by different scenarios. I can also have a look at if I'm going to do a bit of a top-down budget. It's a nice simple example. We can actually add multiple financial and other metrics to the model, where I might have a headcount target, a revenue per employee target, might have some financial metrics as well. And because TM1 is read-write, what I can actually do is go into any cell, type a number in, 300 million, that's a bit excessive, but you can see that I've now set my number, and just that one entry point is very important. So TM1 is read-write. As soon as I press enter, up, down, tab, that number has been committed back to that central server. So what that means is you've immediately eradicated Excel spreadsheets. We've got no visibility as to who's doing what, but I can see in real time as users are entering the number. Not only see what they're doing, but my consolidations are calculating in real time as well. So I can see what my total number is climbing up to or down. So very, very powerful capability in terms of read-write. In this model I've got tolerances with a bit of traffic lighting as well to alert me to an area that might be bad or good or what have you. But let's jump in as an end user. So I'll start with my budget and forecast model. And what we'll see is that when I come into my model, I might start with my profit and loss section here. So this is an organisation that we can handle intercompany consolidations as well, eliminations, intercompany journals and entries. But if I start with my P&L, pretty typical sort of template where you've got your chart of accounts down the side, got my time periods, and I've got some key metrics that have been pulled out as well, like my revenue, my gross profit and so forth. And note my revenue is very low, it's 120K. But again, I can complete or review any other scenario that I want. So if I want to have a look at my actuals, I click actuals and there's my actual results. And obviously we're only up to September. So TM1 is connected to my general ledger or my ERP platform. So if my actual numbers are changing, then every day, every hour, every minute, or every second, TM1 will be refreshed with our latest data. So I don't need to go in and log on to my ERP system and run a report. We can actually sit over the top of all our different platforms and pull the data into our single environment. What I can also do with this, so if I go back to my budget, you'll see that my cost centers or my planning centers are listed in here as well. So if I wanted to have a look at, for example, general administration, I click general administration, and there's all my administration costs. If I want to look at my internet channel, so down here, pick it, and you'll see that the data refreshes. The importance of this is that I don't have to maintain a template for every individual department. I can maintain one template, and yet that can be used across all my departments. So if I need to make a change, I make it once, and everyone has the same access. If I was only responsible for this one planning department, I would only see that planning department. There'd be no other departments available for me to access. I'm an administrator, so I get the pleasure of seeing everything. And now let's have a look at some of the key capability within TM1. So you'll note that there is green cells and white cells within my model. So the green cells are calculated using other operational models that feed into my financial results. There's rules that drive or determine the calculations. But my white cells allow me to do data entry directly into my model. So as an example, for March, if I was going to spend $25,000 for my marketing campaigns, I can type that in. I've got a bunch of shortcut keys, so I can go R, repeat that way, greater than sign. So I want to repeat 2,500 that way. It'll spread that number across the side there. I can do P, proportionally spread 40,000. I can do on top here, for example, that 45,000, adjust it to 50,000. I enter it, and you'll see that it proportionally spreads the difference of that 5,000 to the children underneath it. But sometimes I might want to just spread a number using something like working days. And if I said that it's going to be 40,000, you'll see that there's a rule there, so it's determining that calculation and portioning it based on my working days. Or again, things like even, manually, quarters, I can make all those changes quickly into my data. What's also important is all my consolidations are happening in real time as well. So if I think for the total year, it shouldn't be 90,000, but 200,000, I can enter 200,000, and again, it will do the break back at a total level down to my children. So this is how I can actually achieve the top-down budgeting process very quickly. We can actually go in and just put in personnel costs as this, revenues this, and get a quick high-level number out. And we can actually break that back down, either using our actuals with our load play for last year, or any other metrics to phase the data down. But if I wanted to fix a number, so that $88,000, I can right-click and I can say hold. And you'll see that it puts a little pause button just in that cell for me. So now if I was to increase this by another $50,000, that 88,000 will remain the same, but then it will proportionally spread the difference to the other remaining children automatically as well. So very powerful if your CFO says, right, we're freezing travel, you can right-click, freeze travel, and then do other spreads on any other cells as well very quickly to create a new scenario. On any cells, what you can also do is right-click, add a comment. So go add comment, say please review this result, post. And you can add multiple comments as well. No. The cool thing with this, I'm simulating multiple users obviously, but the key thing with this is that you've got who the user was that made the comment, and the value at the time that they made the comment as well, and the timestamp when they actually made it. And you can actually see a number has a comment in it. It's got a little blue icon, a little tick in the top of that screen there, so that's held to that value. What you can also do is you can actually put comments on that entire model. So I can actually say, you know, this is done. For example, you can tag people in it. In the labs and development, you're going to have a voting section as well, so you can put things up for vote and people can vote on it, so yes, no. So we've got chat across the platform as well. Right, now as I mentioned before, I'll just pause there actually. Are there any questions just on what you have seen there? It's pretty 101 stuff from a data capture perspective, and there's a lot more different spreading capabilities, but any questions?
No, all good.
Sorry.
Just on the actual.
Yes.
Are you able to drill down on that?
Good question. You, my friend, are 10 minutes ahead of me.
Oh.
When we get to the actual analysis tab, I'm going to ask you a question, and if I don't, make sure But yes, you can, without giving it away too much. Right, so as I said, the green cells are calculated cells. So what I can actually do is, any of these values, I can right click. You'll see I've got a drill through. So if I do a drill through to my drivers and rules, you'll see that what is displayed is the actual same period with all the different variables that are used to determine that calculation. So I had $2,910. The cool thing about this is that you can see the rules, and the rules are written in plain English. So it doesn't say equals VLOOKUP sheet 1, workbook 4, Excel spreadsheet language. It's written in plain business language, or the language that we give our dimensions and our element names. And this is why I talked earlier about having a good business glossary, a good master data dictionary in terms of your names and your standards. It becomes so much easier when it comes to analyze the results or interrogate the numbers. What you can also do, so I like to display that same information a bit more easier for my users. So on any of my royalty calculations, I can drill through and see a bit more of a diagrammatic explanation of how I've determined that number. Okay? So you can see the different arrows going in and out. And what I like about this feature is that it's self-documenting. So again, if I go into my different periods here and I go into June, so you'll see that the total there is 3.55. If I pick June, you'll see it's 2.91. It's dynamically refreshing and calculating my numbers, so it's very much self-documenting how the numbers have been determined. So auditors, PwCs, KPMGs, really love the capability to be able to understand and trace where numbers have come from. But again, as you remember, TM1 is read-write, so if I change my asset value to 25%, for example, it's now 2.69. Go back to my profit and loss, you'll see that my June values are now 2.685, right? So 2.69. So if I make a change in any one area of the system, it's immediately updating my P&L, cash flow, balance sheet, anything else that hangs off this. Alrighty, so with a lot of the models that I like to build, I like to incorporate the ability to break down some transactions a bit further. So in that previous screen, when I'm directly entering against my P&L, it's very much a high-level number. I'm putting in a number, but my thought process as to how I've arrived at may not be captured by model. So I can actually pick any accounts and then actually build up my transactions, which will aggregate back up to my P&L if you wanted to provide more details. You don't have to. You can directly enter in the P&L or go into a transactional-based data capture. So my personnel costs, just as another example, so what fundamentally I'm doing, I'm connecting to my payroll system. It's often a very good source of truth because people generally complain if they don't get paid. So it's often a seeding for our actuals. We can have all our current staff and complement literally available in our planning model. The cool thing about this is that it's secure, so you don't have to let people see this data, but it's in TM1, in Planning Analytics. It's not sitting in spreadsheets that run the risk of being emailed around or externally of the organization. So we can go direct, not exporting data out, people's salaries, and have security around that entire process. I can, with my model here, add in a new role. I can say that this person is going to be 70,000. You'll see that we've also got string information, or what we call pick lists within the model, which has been used to determine other calculations. So I can say permanent full-time, say that they're salaried or packaged. I can, FTEs 1, I can make them 0.5, for example. You can actually put in the specific working day that they're going to start, or just a general period, month from, month to. Depends on how detailed you want to get with your models here. And you'll see that it does all the calculations for me and calculates the number of FTEs that I'm going to have. So the cool thing about this is that if I look at my profit and loss, you'll see my personnel costs are $564,000. But if I was to make a ridiculous change here, so let's go and give this person a pay rise. Here we go, that's a pretty decent pay rise, I'd say. And if I go back to my P&L, you'll see that that's $830,000 now as well. And all my personnel costs down at the bottom of the screen here, you can see it all rule driven off those changes that I'm making.
So just have a question in relation to the personnel. So does that capture, different states and different countries where your staff is, or?
Very good question. So when I look at, I'll just segue into that one. So I've got my global assumptions here. So what sits behind this, and you might not give users certainly access to this, it might be controlled by administrator or something like that. So you can see here, here's some of my HR assumptions, and you can see I've got different workers rate, payroll rates and things like that as well, all available. So I can adjust those independently and it will calculate through. But really, as I'm going to build a model shortly, you can see you can add in and calculate anything else that you want as well. This is what we have out of the box, so to speak, but you can certainly add your own calculations into the model as well. Did that answer that question? Cool. The other cool thing about TM1 is that you can do multiple scenarios. I've shown you budget and forecast and things like that, but within a budget, you can also have multiple versions or sandboxes, is what we call them. So here, you'll see that I'm looking at my base case. This is my base budget scenario. If I wanted to create a new sandbox, so I've got a few new ones there. It's the end of the week, I'm running out of names. We'll call this one demo. So I'm creating a new one and it's going to create it from a copy of my base. So I click create. You'll see nothing has changed, but when I look at this, I'm now looking at my demo version. So if I was to enter a value, so let me just scroll up a little bit here. So if I enter a value to my marketing costs, one of these costs here, one number. So as I enter that, you'll see, it might be a little bit hard to see, but you can see that's blue. Okay, and all the impact or consolidations are blue because this is a number that's now different to my base scenario. So it's allowed me to play and then see the impact of making an adjustment. The same thing exists if I go into my personnel model again, and I come down to my new FTEs, my new headcount. I flick to my demo version here, and that's actually, they're actually doing a really good job. So let's increase that a little bit. 900,000, and so then I go back, you'll see that all my personnel costs and any other impacting is now all in blue as well because it's now been impact on that change. This is really cool if you want to keep a version of your own personal scenario. If your CFO says, look, these are the numbers, this is what they're going to be, this is what we'll sign off on, you go, I don't think they're going to be that, I don't think they're going to be this version. And you can keep them up your sleeve and then halfway through the budget, at the actual process, you can say, see, I told you, and have your own personal view of what you have. But I can actually then commit these back as well, click the tick button, click yes, and it will commit these back to my base model. So if I go back to my base now, you'll see that the numbers are the same. Okay, so you can create different high risk, low risk, different models within a individual scenario. Right, travel, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So you can see here I've got a very detailed travel model where I can actually put in my destination, origin, and it's got all the calculations. Again, the green elements have been driven automatically. The one thing I do like about this model is that when I'm entering information, I'm trying to make it as easy for the users as possible to capture just the key information that we need to determine a cost or a calculation. So I can actually specify that my fare is going to be fully flexible or no discounted fare. The number of nights, I'm going for 2 nights. There's a whole group of us going, so there's 10 people going. All the other calculations are automatically completed. But you'll see here my food for that 2-night period for 20 people is automatically calculated using a global assumption. So I've said, look, if you don't tell us anything, we're just going to calculate that for you and put that in. But if I want to allow the users, I can say, no, let's increase it to $200 per person per night. And you'll see that $1,600 has now been overridden to $4,000, which is good. I can actually track my global calculations versus user-based assumptions as well. And again, out to the right-hand side, you can see I can enter commentary to justify or explain how I've derived the number. Right, predictive revenue, or predictive anything actually. This is where we get into some of the real powerful stuff. So we've got a lot of clients. I've got a retail example here. This particular organisation sells t-shirts and caps and hats and pants. And when they're doing their demand plan, merchandise for planning, there's a lot of lines, there's a lot of SKUs that they need to get through. And certainly when you look at the colours and sizes, when you look at just the product range, and again, it's very granular in terms of going out days or weeks for our planning purposes. We've got a lot of universities as well. They do a lot of course-based planning. Some universities have over 4,000 courses, and when you look at the number of campuses, and they've got a plan for continuing students versus new students, international versus Commonwealth. So there's a lot of lines that we need to actually individually forecast, which can take a lot of time. So we can leverage some algorithms, some predictive algorithms to help drive out a set of numbers. And you can see within my model here, I've got a whole range of different techniques. Don't ask me what they all do. I do know what a linear regression is, and I do know what a seasonal model, and a little bit about an ARIMA model. But what's cool about this is that I can actually do what we call an ensemble. What that will look at is it will look at every individual line, it will look at its data pattern. It will use an algorithm to calculate a forecast or a future value, and then it will test how accurate that output is. The way it tests is it will partition the data, so it might build it on 50% of the model and then test that on the other 50% of the model, or it might use a technique where I give it 2014, 15, and 16's data. I don't give it 2017's, even though we've got actuals for that, and I let it build it, and I compare its result to what actually happened in 2017. And then, out of all those techniques, it will rank them as to which is overall accurate, and then ensemble those models and derive a new forecast for me. But I don't have to do that manually. All I need to do is click on this button, generate forecast. So as I do that, it's very quick as well. You'll see that it's generated that forecast and populated my numbers for me. And again, that goes out however many weeks we need it to go out across as many different products or different SKUs. And again, if I don't agree with the numbers or want to change the numbers, because it's TM1, because it's Planning Analytics, I can actually type in a number, and it's $6,000 or 6,000 units, and you see everything updates. And I did that one on purpose just to show that that comes through. We're getting a lot of clients as well that would actually use this type of technique against their manually built budget or forecast. Because it's also a very good way to see if what we're planning on doing is actually mathematically feasible compared to all our history and everything else we've done and so forth. And of course you can add external events into the model as well, what you know, build that into the model, but it's a good way to get through a lot of data and get generated forecast to save time. Any questions just on that? Very good. So, we've got a lot of other areas, capital planning, where we can actually enter individual CapEx transactions. We can source all the actuals. I can change what category assets belong to. So this one's not software, it's land, for example. And then the purchase period, time frame, and all my cash flow and balance sheet are all automatically driven from this key information. And finally, what I might want to actually have a look at is look at my results, where I can look at it for all my cost centers or an individual planning center. I can look at it, and again, everything sort of moves around and changes. I can look at Q4, for example. And with all the charting capability as well, we can also do the drilling. So I can left click and then drill through on my charts as well to the underlying data behind it, which is pretty powerful. And the other thing as well, if you want to, we can make it hands-free as well. So you can click the play button and it goes through and calculates all those models. Make it for a much more interactive board pack. Right, actuals. So you asked a question about the drill through. So obviously I'm inheriting my actuals into my model. And again, because we're connected, if I have a new account that gets added, all my reports and templates are automatically updated. I don't need to manually go in and insert another line and then check my formulas and my totals are all adding up. It automatically happens. So what I can do with this is, if I've got a number that I want to look at, I can drill to my transactions. And we'll pass a query through to an open ODBC compliant database or source system and return the transactions based on the intersection that I'm looking at. In this case, I was looking at a particular planning center, a particular account code, and a particular time period, and just return the transactions up. There are a couple of gotchas on this. So if you're a bank, for example, you're going to drill into bank fees, for example. You could have billions of transactions. So you want to think about what sort of impact that's going to have when it runs that query to return the results. But you can put restrictions on it. You can say, give me the top 100 transactions by value, or things like that as well. So it actually can do a bit of the heavy lifting for you. What I really like about this capability is that if I've got an integrated actual forecast model, and if I can actually see that there's some costs here that I was budgeting for in the next month, but I've actually spent them in the current month, I can adjust my forecast in the same area. I don't need to log into another system, run a report, and then manually update it. I can do that automatically within my planning environment. And then what a lot of organizations struggle with, and I say struggle with, is that most projects that we work on, a lot of people focus on getting the P&L out, right? Very rarely do we do an integrated cash flow and balance sheet model as well. everything I'm doing here, every change I'm making, it is recalculating the balance sheet, it's recalculating my cash flow with all the rules and logic in terms of how my revenue hits my periods in terms of debtor days and things like that, how my asset purchase are impacting on my balance sheet, with how they're funded, whether they're cash funded or some other funding model, and automatically delivering that in that integrated environment. Very important to get the three-way financial view. From a documentation perspective, I like to be able to see how my models hang together, so I can see my HR assumptions feed into my salaries feed into my profit and loss, and so forth. So good documentation, good glossary in terms of common business language, business terms. We've got to remember not all our users are accountants or necessarily work in the same division, so being able to have a clear glossary. And the other cool thing with, I think I've got my sound on so they might start. So the other cool thing with my models, and we're doing a lot more of, is embedding videos. So these can be actually training videos. If I've got users that are geographically spread across Australia or across the world, you can actually embed videos on how to do something, how to capture my budget, how to enter my P&L, how to update my personnel costs. And then I literally can give them a link to the site, say here, log on, watch the videos, and give me a call if you've got any questions. Quite a good way to onboard the team. All right, and then quickly, finally, we've got another model that allows us to capture another use of TM1, Planning Analytics. So, where I can actually capture my timesheet by individual employee. So I can actually see for every day, every week, the work that I'm doing by each individual client that I've got access to for individual projects. So I can actually see, if I go down to the next person, for example, my productivity percentages, my annual leave, and so forth. And this is all connected to, I use my employee rates here, where I've got, if I'm a services organisation, I'm determining a margin or a bill rate, an invoice rate per client, per project. And I've got my cost rates as well. You can see here I've got a global assumption with my margin at 22%, but for individuals I can actually mark them up. It's going to be 50%, for example, and my bill rate will adjust. My cost rate, because it's a fully integrated model, you see I can drill through to how my hourly rate's been calculated, so I can actually see some more details about that individual employee as well. So this is really powerful, being able to forecast out, for example, I'm going to have 80% utilisation on these people, and I can actually calculate my budget automatically for me, but also be a mechanism to capture my actuals as well. And then, because we've got a powerful model here, I can start slicing and dicing this information by client, by day, by week, by activity. And you can see I can drag down my employees and actually have a look at my employees for one client, for all clients, and start drilling out my productive time, what activities were spent, and so forth, which is pretty powerful stuff, right? So we're now going to build a model. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a question, but if it doesn't make sense, just ignore.
No.
I'm just thinking, you mentioned like intercompany transactions, and if just thinking, is there a way I can create a validation where if I enter the expenditure for one company, it can trigger some form of maybe alert for the company that's receiving the
Yes.
any transaction?
Good question. Absolutely can. I've got another client. It's a government funding model, and what they do is that they can request funds from other departments, which doesn't physically move the dollars, but I get alerted that someone wants some of my cash, right, or my funds. So we've got a whole workflow process around that. So it ties into our email. So as soon as I go, I want to move this much from that entity to this entity, I'll say approve or request, and we'll generate an email. It will send me and the other person, the recipient, an email saying, Matthew wants to add $20,000 of his budget, of your budget to his budget. Do you approve? Yes or no? If I click approve, it handles that calculation, does the elimination using either true debit credits, so you can actually track the journal entries that go through, and then you've got a report and audit trail for that as well. So absolutely. A lot of this is how do you want it to work for your organisation as well, because as I show you, when we build a model, it's very quick and easy to build a model that can do this. Okay. Any other questions? Very good. So just going to quickly build a model here. So I've got a couple of key things for you to learn about. So the fundamental building blocks of our model, we start with what we call a dimension. A dimension is a set of data that is relevant to that dimension. So a chart of account dimension has all my chart of account objects and parent-child relationships. I might have a product dimension with all my products. I might have a regional or location dimension. I might have time dimensions. So I need to understand my dimensions and the hierarchies within those, and then I combine my dimensions to create a business model, or what we call a cube. Then those cubes can talk to each other. So I might have a general ledger cube and a payroll cube, and they will interact and talk to each other. So my payroll costs will be calculated by an individual employee, by location, by cost center, by weeks or months. And then my GL will be calculated by account, but it will be populated for my personnel costs. Okay? I've just given you like a 1,000-foot view as to how things work within a Tier 1 world, planning analytics world. So I'm going to create a new dimension here, and we'll start with my location. I'll just put demo on the end here. Okay. And what I'm going to do, you see I've got a blank canvas here with my location. So what I can do is now just drag in, I've got a little Excel file here, my location, drag it, drop it, and you'll see it's populated the information. I can now say that my state is my parent, and automatically will identify that my child is my city. So if I click import now, you'll see that that's now created that parent-child relationship automatically. I can then schedule that to update every hour, every night, every day on demand. So if a new cost center, a new location gets added, it'll be automatically populated in here. The other cool thing is that we might have multiple hierarchies, which I'll touch base on in a minute, but you need to think about this from a planning world. While this might be my actual representation of my structures, how I want to structure it next year might be a bit different. So very important to have multiple hierarchies within the planning environment. What I can also do with this is add in manual elements or new elements as well. So if I say Australia, New Zealand, world, for example, so I can commit those, and you'll see that I can now let's drag north and south into New Zealand here, and that one. Yeah. So it's the south, so it's south into New Zealand. And then Queensland, so I can actually shrink these up. Drag them all at once into Australia, and then I can also drag Australia and New Zealand under my world. So you see here I've just built in another level of that hierarchy just simply by dragging and dropping, okay? No code, no development, no scripting, no ETL. Done. So what I'm also going to do, let's do another one. So I'm going to create a new dimension called product demo. And this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. So you'll see that I've got my product dimension, straightforward, drag and drop. My product group, parent-child relationship, import. Happy with that. And then what I might want to do is create what we call an alias. So these are just names of my products, but I might have product codes, short name, long name, descriptions. I might have different ways that I want to report these elements. So what I can actually do is go create new hierarchy and call it all products. For example, create, and I'll add in my total products. And what I'm going to do is just go back to this hierarchy here, copy all of these elements in, Control-C, Control-V always works as well. Paste as a child. There's a few different options there, but I'm just going to paste these as a child. I'm just going to delete these hierarchies here. Here we go, delete from hierarchy. So that's got a nice flat list, and what I'm going to do is create a new attribute. In this case, I'm going to call it product name or code and description. Code and description, and you'll see that it gives me some space here to add in some alternative names for this element. So I've got a quick file here called product name. There we go. Apologies if I'm going too fast. Thank you, stay till 9 o'clock tonight. And if I click OK, you'll see there that I've got that now, the alias there as well. So I can report on either that name, that code, whatever else I might want to have in my reports and in my template. So that's all well and good. And then the next element to actually building my model is to actually create that cube. So I've already got things like my month dimension, my time dimension, my scenario dimension. They're already set up. I don't need to rebuild them or recreate them again. So what I'm going to do is create a new cube, and we'll call this cube sales demo. And I know that I'm going to want to see my sales data by location. I'm going to want to see it using my quantity, revenue. I'm going to want to see it by product or month. We go month and then my product. And then I'm going to want to see it by scenario and year perhaps. So there's my scenario and there's my year at the bottom down there. There we go. So while that's taking me a few seconds to think about and do, the reality is you actually need to really think about the dimensionality of your models and how you want to report, analyze your data, or what level you want to budget and capture. So there's a bit of an art, a science in terms of actually determining what is a dimension, what is a measure, and what should be in a cube and what should not be in a cube. Now if I click create, I've created that model and I can actually right click, add a new view, and you'll see here now that I can actually have a look at, let's move my products down to my rows, simply by dragging and dropping. So there's all the products that I just created. What I can also do with this is turn on that alias. So instead of having, let's have a look at my code and description there, go apply, so there's that code and description that I showed you now. There's my hierarchy with all our different locations. So I'm going to pick Sydney, let's have a look at January, and let's have a look at 2018, what was the number, and I don't want to look at my variance, I want to have a look at my actuals. Okay, so you see I can create a quick view here very easily. There's a problem though, I don't have my data in here, right? So it's a shelf, it's a mere husk of what it could be. So what I can do, I've got this other file called actual data. There we go, it's got about 7,000 rows of data in there. And what I can actually do with that now is drag that data, drop it into the cube I want to import it into, and then you'll see it comes up with this import wizard which helps me map each of my fields here that I'm going to use. So that's going to be my product, that's going to be Armadale's location, January is my month, 2018 is my year, and my scenario. And the last value is going to be my value numeric that I want to import. So if I click import now, everyone crosses their fingers, you'll see that it's gone through all the rows and it's updated 7,193 cells. So I can actually refresh and see that the numbers come through there. And again, I can schedule that now. I can say, do this every day, check for the new values, update it every night, update it every 20 minutes, produce the numbers. No code, no development, drag, drop, so very quick and easy to build these models. You'll note that I'm missing something again, and then it's my revenue calculation. So what I'm going to do is form or create a business rule. And to do that, right click, edit business rule, and then I'm going to expand my measures for my revenue here, and I'm going to say that my revenue, if I just drag and drop this in the screen here, sorry, revenue equals quantity multiplied by, can anyone guess? On rate. How's that? The cool thing, I've written a very basic rule here, but if I look at my functions, you can see here there's a lot of different mathematical functions. So if you wanted to use cosine or a tan calculation in your model, you can. Haven't seen many of those. But you might want to generate some random numbers or look at max, min, log. There's literally all the functions that you can have in Excel, you can provide them here. But the cool thing about this is now as I save that rule, you'll see that my revenue, I want to save that, so my revenue is all calculated automatically now. Okay? And again, like anything else I've shown you before, if I wanted to trace a value, you can say trace cell, and you'll see that it shows me again the calculation that I've just written, and then the two variables that have been determined in those calculations. Those two variables are input. If one was a rule, I could then drill into that rule as well. So I can have full data lineage through all my calculations to drill back, to see where the source of the data has come from. Right, so from here, what I might want to do is now just structure this out a bit better and make it a bit more presentable. So maybe I put my months along the top here. Let's change my months so I don't have annual or my all months in there. So let's just remove those. Delete. Apply and close. I want to roll up my product grouping, so my mowers, trimmers, washing and cutting. What I might want to do is, so now you can see here I'm looking at quantity, but I can actually put it back to my revenue, for example. There's my revenue. If I was going to drag out my location, so it's my location up there as well. Let's put my measures up here as well. And you'll see that what I can actually do is what we call synchronization. So synchronize between multiple objects. So what that means is if I click on here and go synchronize, and I'll synchronize my dimensions here, just my location and my measures. So all that means is if I change my quantity here, then that chart will change, or that view will change down there. And what I might want to do now is then duplicate this. So duplicate. I can hide all these elements. See this section, the columns and the rows here? Maybe we want to hide those from the users. So I can actually hide those and only give them the 2 selections there. So it makes it a bit more locked down for them. Expand that. Down here, what I'm going to do is I'll just swap these around and I'm going to create a visualization. So again, clicking here and hovering over that will say change visualization. As I do that, you'll see I've got a lot of different options. I can do a stack column chart, and the charts are really relevant to the data set that I was looking at. So if I had just one element of my columns and rows, then it'll give pie charts, for example. So I can do a stack column chart. There we go. I'll duplicate that and hide my section heading there, drag it up to the top. Here we go, and I've created another one down here, and I'm just going to pull that back up. And let's do a world famous bubble chart. So if I go here, change my chart type to a packed bubble chart. Here we go, got a packed bubble chart. Because I knew someone will ask for a packed bubble chart. You're all just waiting going, oh, when's he going to show a packed bubble chart? One to know more. There's my packed bubble chart. So the cool thing about this is if I change again, Sydney to Armidale, for example, all my graphs, charts, numbers all dynamically change and are refreshed based on that. We're missing something else. Let's put an image in. So I'll put an image in. So I've got an image location here, because when you're doing demos, it's very important when you're dealing with images to make sure that you are well prepared and you don't go and open up your picture library just in case. So I've got my picture there. There we go. That's our mowers that we're selling. And I know someone's going to ask if they could have a picture of a ship. So yes, you can. There's my ship. And what's that? You want it to be blue? Not a problem. I can make it blue. So you can also put in things like an actual web page as well. So if you've got like the bank's exchange rates, you can actually have a live web page in here, and you might want to update from the exchange rates to the impact on cash flow, or commodity prices. So if you want to have a look at the price of copper or coal or whatever, have that within the model coming from an external source as well. So I can actually then turn that off from a edit mode, change that to, and you'll see that it becomes a bit more fixed for the users. They can't drag anything around, break it or anything like that. I still dynamically change things. I can share this, I can pump it out as an email, download it, send it out as a link in a URL, which requires them to have security to log on and see the data, which is very important. When I download it, I can download it to PowerPoint, PDF, images, I can send it to Excel. So there's a lot of that additional capability that you just normally sort of expect from a platform like this. And the other cool thing about this as well is that, just to show some of the natural language processing AI capability. So I could say what my sales for mowers for actual 2018 Jan, for example, right? And as I do that, it's going to mind you. I don't even have to look at my cubes, my business models, or anything else. It'll look through that data and find exactly where that information might lie, and I can use that and drop it into my model. So it's my sales demo, January 2018 for mowers automatically. It's hidden all the other dimensions. So where we're going in the world of finance over the next few years is going to be really interesting, because what I'm actually typing there can actually be spoken. So I can say, create my budget using my last forecast, hold my personnel costs, but change the exchange rate to 90 cents, and it will calculate that automatically for me. Or run my P&L report for the month of July. So if you think about our careers in finance, things are going to change very dramatically very soon. for the better. So that, my friends, concludes the actual live demonstration of the product Planning Analytics. So before I bring up Grantham up to have a chat about their story, have you got is there any final questions that I can answer?
Is there a capability for lights out loading of actual data?
Lights out, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
So don't load at certain points in time, or
Yeah, so say
month end, don't want to
or-
change.
yeah.
Absolutely. So you can actually schedule that, but you can actually schedule it so that it doesn't happen after the first 3 days of month end, for example.
Yeah.
Or do it on demand.
Yeah.
Change it to demand, because you might realise, oh, we've got some accruals, so I just want to process the accruals. So I want to bring in the delta of the changes since I last updated, not refresh everything. So there's all those different options as well.
And the source of target mapping?
Yep, all included in that, absolutely, absolutely. The questions? Yes.
With the SaaS model of this, what's the time from like a start to a people using it?
Yeah, cool. Well,
I know that's
yeah.
subjective.
No, sure. So, like so there's two elements to it, right? So as soon as we say we're going ahead with this and we place the order, it's available within 30 minutes. Like it's spun up. We've got a new URL name. So my URL might be Cortell.Planning Analytics. I forget the exact URL name, but I get my own URL. And then actually building a model depends again greatly on the level of detail, the complexity of your model. I was using, some fairly simplistic rules because this is a demo session, but when we don't all have simple rules like this, so there might be a case of a situation where we actually review how we do things currently. Are we doing things the right way, or are we doing things because it's the way we've always done it? So going back and actually challenging that. But if you actually know what your requirements are and go, this is exactly what I want to build, and here's the rules, here's the calculations, here's the dimensions for which I want to analyze, here's how this works together, and here's my template structure, very, very quick to knock out. But again, a lot of the time, a lot of the work we do is because we know there are issues with our current process. There's issues with the way we do things. There's issues with standardization between similar parts of our business unit that we want to have a uniform manner so that when we roll up, we get uniform KPIs. And it means the same thing. When I'm looking at FTE for one part of the organization, it means the same thing as the FTE count in another part of the organization. So a bit subjective, but generally, these sort of projects for a stock standard budgeting, if I was to drop that in, that model that you saw today into your site, it would be a matter of weeks before you're up and running. You're not talking months or years.